video, I'll demonstrate how to use the GNOME package manager. In Linux, we can work with software packages in terms of viewing, installing, removing, updating, either from the command line or from the graphical environment. Here in the GNOME desktop environment, I'll begin by going to the Applications menu in the upper left. Then I'll choose the System Tools menu, under which I'll then choose Software. It prompts me that the package installer is running as a privileged user because I'm logged in as root. I'm going to click the Continue Anyway button, and I'll maximize the software management screen. Here in the left-hand panel, I can see package collections. These are categories of different types of software. Each of these package collection categories has a little triangle to the left where I could click on it to expand it to show me more. For example, I've expanded System, and under System, I can see things like debugging tools. If I click on debugging tools on the left, I get the specific software packages that relate to that on the right. The items that have a check mark are those that are already installed. The items that are faded and without a check mark are not installed. I'm going to collapse the System category. I could also expand the Applications category and really do the same thing. For example, I might choose Technical Writing on the left, and on the right I can see all of the software packages related to technical writing and their state in terms of whether they're installed or not. What I can also do is search for specific software instead of manually browsing through all of the categories. In the upper left, I've got a search box. I'll click to put my cursor there. Here what I might do is search, for example, for a tool or a program like gedit, and I'll press Enter. I can see it found all software packages related to gedit. The first one, it says Text Editor for the GNOME desktop, and it's already been installed, which of course is true because we've been using the gedit graphical tool in the GNOME desktop environment. It's installed automatically with GNOME. I might also search for other tools, such as Wireshark, and so on. Here I can see I have the Wireshark Network Packet Capturing tool, so I can search for things that I wish to install. What we can also do is we can also go to the Software menu. Up here in the taskbar, Software is there because we've got the software tool loaded. If I close it, that disappears from our panel at the top. So I'll once again go to the Applications menu, System Tools, and Software, and I'll click Continue Anyway, and again we can see Software at the top in our application panel bar. That's relevant because when I click the software listing up in our panel, I get specific options related to our Software Package Manager tool. One of the things I'd like to change here is the Software Sources. So I'll click on Software Sources, and then I'll click on the Software Sources tab. This is a list of software repositories that are available for Red Hat Enterprise Linux 7. Any that are currently being used when we go into the Software Package Manager will have a check mark. And we can see that that's the case for a software repository called Red Hat Enterprise Linux 7 Server, RPMs. However, I can scroll through, let's say, down to Red Hat Enterprise Linux 7 Server Supplementary RPMs, and I can turn on that repository. Here it's downloading the repository information from that on the internet, the metadata. It's not downloading all the software. Then what I could do is click Close. Now what I may want to do is go back to the software listing up in our panel, and I might tell it to refresh package lists to make sure I'm looking at the latest collection of packages that I can install, including those available through my software repositories that I've just added. In this video, we learned how to use the GNOME Package Manager. In this video, I'll demonstrate how to install software using the GNOME Package Manager. The first thing we do is we go to the Applications menu in the upper left, then we choose System Tools and then Software. It tells me the package installer is running as a privileged user because I'm logged in as root. I'll click Continue Anyway. Then I'll maximize the Software Package Manager screen. In the upper left, I can search for software, either that's already been installed or that I wish to install or remove. Here, I'm going to type Wireshark. I want to search for the Wireshark program, which allows me to monitor the network by capturing packets. I'll press enter to perform the search, and on the right, there are two search results. The first one is the application itself, and the second one is the GNOME desktop integration for Wireshark. If I select one of these software packages, in the bottom right, I've got a number of buttons that are available. I can install the package, visit the project website, view the files that would be put on the system if we were to install the package. I'll go ahead and click Files. Here's the files and also the directories that they would be placed in if we were to install this software package. I've also got a button called Required Packages. It tells me that there is no other software that requires this one. So there are no dependencies for other software upon Wireshark. We can also click Dependent Packages to see what other software must be installed in order for our current software, in this case Wireshark, to install. Here I have a number of dependencies that are required before Wireshark can be installed. The nice thing about Red Hat Enterprise Linux is it should install all of the dependencies for me. I don't have to install them myself first. I'll click OK. I want to install both of these software packages, so I'll put a check mark in the boxes for each of the two, and then I'll click the Apply Changes button in the upper right. I have a progress bar in the bottom left, so I can kind of track the progress to see how long it will take for this to happen. And now the Wireshark application has been installed. So I'm going to go ahead and close my Software Package Manager screen, and I'm going to launch the newly installed app. I'll do that by going to the Applications menu in the upper left, then I'll choose the Internet submenu, and here I can see the Wireshark Network Analyzer. So I'll go ahead and launch it. Wireshark is used by administrators to capture network packets to monitor network activity. I can start a packet capture by clicking the leftmost button in the toolbar, after which I would then put a check mark by the network interface I want to capture traffic on, then I would click Start. So we can see that it is working. We've installed the software successfully, and now it's capturing network traffic. I'll stop the packet capture. In this video, we learned how to install software using the GNOME Package Manager. In this video, I'll demonstrate how to update the Linux system using GNOME. Software updates are really important for a number of reasons. The first is security. We want to make sure any known security vulnerabilities are fixed by patching software from the vendor. Secondly, we want to make sure if there are any stability problems with our software that they are addressed by patching or updating that software. We can update our software here in the GNOME desktop environment. We start by going to the Applications menu in the upper left, then by choosing System Tools and Software. It's going to warn me that I'm logged in as a privileged user, but I'll just click Continue anyway, and I'll maximize our Software Package Manager screen. In the left-hand panel, I have categories of software. For example, if I expand servers, I can see Email Server, and I'll click on that category. On the right, I can see some of the packages that are installed and some are not. Well, we're not here to install or uninstall packages. Instead, what we want to do is we want to update software that's installed on our specific Linux host. Well, to do this, up in our application panel at the top, because we've started the Software Package Manager tool, there's an entry up in the panel that says Software. If I click on it, I have the option to check for updates. I'm going to go ahead and click Check for Updates. Again, it warns me that I'm logged in as the privileged root user. I'll just click Continue anyway. Now, it's determined any updates that apply to what I've got installed on my Linux system. In the bottom left, it tells me that there are 124 updates that are selected. What we would normally do is scroll through the updates, and if there are any that we don't want to apply, we would remove the check mark. Whenever you test updates, you should make sure it's in a controlled lab environment. The last thing you want to do is apply new updates to a live production system that you depend on. Sometimes applying updates has unintended consequences, so we need to be careful with this. Here, I'll click Quit. In this video, we learned how to apply updates to the Linux system using GNOME. In this demonstration, I'll configure automatic updates in GNOME. In the upper left of the GNOME desktop environment, I'm clicking on the Applications menu under which I'm choosing System Tools and then Software. I'll then click on Continue Anyway when prompted that I'm running as a privileged user. Here in the Software Package Manager tool, we can search for specific software by typing in criteria in the search bar in the upper left, or we can click on the categories on the left and select various applications to see what's been installed, which is implied with the check mark, versus what is not installed, which does not have a check mark. To uninstall something, we could actually remove the check mark and apply the changes. However, what we want to do is determine how we can configure automatic updating for software that is installed. When we start the Software Package Manager in the GNOME desktop environment, it adds the software entry up in our application panel at the top of the screen. If I click on that, I've got the option to check for updates. I've also got the option to look at software sources. Now, when I choose check for updates, it checks it at this point in time, but I don't have the option of scheduling it on a recurrent basis. So that's not what I'm looking for. Instead, I'll go under software and I'll choose software sources. Now, I'm not really interested in adding other software repositories under the software sources list. Instead, under the update settings, I want to schedule updates. Here, I can determine how often to check for updates. I'm going to choose weekly. I'm also going to turn on the check marks to check for updates when using mobile broadband as well as when on battery power. Now, if this host is functioning as a server, those probably don't apply. It's never going to be running on battery power, and it's probably not going to be using a mobile 3 or 4G connection. At this point, I would click Close, and I've now scheduled my updates to occur weekly. Now I can check to see if any updates have been applied over time by going back up under the software listing in the application panel and viewing the software log. I'll click Continue Anyway on the message that pops up. Here I can see any software that was installed, updated, or removed. In this video, we learned how to configure automatic updates in GNOME. In this video, I'll demonstrate how to use the yum command. In Linux, yum stands for Yellow Dog Updater and Modifier. It's a command line tool that lets us work with software packages. We can install them, remove them, update them, search to see what's installed, and so on. So we can do it at the command line using yum instead of using the GUI environment. The first thing I'll type in here is yum space list, and then I'll pipe that to less. What I'm asking it to do here is to list all available software from all software repositories, whether the software is installed or not. When I press enter, it'll pause after the first screen full because I piped the results of the yum command to the less command. Here I have a list of installed packages first, and as I scroll through the list, I can see it's quite large. As I go further through the list, I will see eventually software that is part of a repository but is not necessarily installed. I'll type Q to quit that output. This time I'm going to type yum space search space, and I'm looking for the Wireshark application. When I press enter, it'll show me any matching packages from all of my software repositories that contain Wireshark. Now I see that there are more than one here, so if I choose to install more than one, I can do it with a single command using wildcards. For example, here I'll type yum space install, because I want to install the Wireshark program, space Wireshark, but I'm going to add an asterisk after Wireshark because I don't want to install each package one at a time. Specifically, I want the 64-bit version along with the GNOME desktop integration. So I'm going to do it all in a single command. Now I'll go ahead and press enter. It's going to check the dependencies to make sure it has what it needs in order for Wireshark to run properly, and after that, it should say dependencies resolved. It's now asking me if it's okay for me to download and install the software. I'm going to type the letter Y. I could have passed a -Y on the command line to the yum command so that it wouldn't stop and prompt me for this. But I'll go ahead and type in Y and press enter. So it's downloading and installing those Wireshark packages. And after a moment, the installation will complete. I can verify this in a number of ways. One, because it's a GUI application, I could go up to the Applications menu here in the GNOME desktop environment, and under the Internet menu, I can see, in fact, Wireshark Network Analyzer is installed. The other way I could view this at the command line is to type yum space list space installed, and I'm going to pipe that to the grep command because all I want to check for is Wireshark being installed or not. If we don't get any output, Wireshark's not installed, but if we do, it is installed. And in fact, we do have output, so we have proof here from the GUI and from the command line that the program has successfully been installed. In this video, we learned how to use yum. In this video, I'll demonstrate how to use the Linux yum command to update the system. Here at the Linux command line, I'll begin by typing yum space repo list. What this will do is show me any enabled software repositories. Here we see there are two. When we install packages or apply updates, we are looking through these software repositories. I'm going to type yum space repo list space all to show me all software repositories, even those that are disabled. When we look at the screen output, we can see our two enabled software repositories. They're listed in the rightmost column as being enabled, but the rest are disabled. Let's say, for example, that we want to enable the Oracle Java RPM software repository. To do that, I would type yum-config-manager, so that's all one command, space --enable, and then within quotes, I would put in the name of the repository. After I press enter, it will have been added, and we can check this by going up through our command history with the up arrow key. I'm going to type yum repo list, and now we're going to see instead of only two repositories, there are now three that are configured. The third one includes the Oracle Java RPMs. Before we apply updates from our software repositories, sometimes we might first want to look at the version of installed packages that we currently have. We can learn of this information using yum space info. So my command will be yum space info space Wireshark. I want information, including versioning info, on the Wireshark installed packages. So I'm going to pipe that to the less command. Here I can see we have a couple of Wireshark packages installed. Notably, we can see the version information and also which repository it was installed from. So if I wanted to check for updates as applied to Wireshark, I could type yum space update space Wireshark. Then I'll press enter. The system is checking the configured software repositories, and it finally determines that there are no packages marked for update. I could also type in yum space update with no additional parameters. What this is going to do is it's going to check for updates for all installed packages on this Linux system. I'll press enter. We can now see a list of packages on the screen scrolling by that will be updated. Then at the bottom, we have a prompt. It asks us if it's okay to install, in this case, 2 packages and to upgrade 122. So at this point, if I do want to go through with the upgrade, I would type the letter Y, and it can take some time. Just remember that when you apply updates, you should be doing it in a test lab environment and not directly to production systems right away. In this video, we learned how to use the Linux yum command to update the system. In this video, I'll demonstrate how to reinstall or replace a software package using yum. From the command line, I'm going to type yum space list space installed. This will show me software packages that have been installed on this host. But sometimes you're looking for something a little more specific. So what we could do is use the up arrow key to bring up that yum list command, and we could add to it. What I'm going to do is pipe to grep, and I'm going to tell it I'm looking for software packages that have the word Wireshark in them. Now, it's only showing me those software packages installed where Wireshark is in the name. Sometimes files get deleted, and what we can do using the yum command is we can tell it to reinstall packages, which is great because it'll replace deleted files. For example, here I'll type yum reinstall Wireshark. Now notice that we've got two packages with the word Wireshark, so it automatically assumes I'm talking about both of them unless I get more specific. It's now prompting me if it's okay to do this, and I'm going to type the letter Y for yes, and I'll press enter. So it's going to download the packages, it's going to make sure all the files are present for those packages, and then if I had a problem, let's say because of a deleted file, the problem will be solved. We have a couple of other options that we can work with using the yum command line tool. We also have the option of removing software. For example, I could type yum space remove. I could also use the word erase. They do the same thing. In this case, I'll type Wireshark. Again, remember there's more than one package with the word Wireshark, so this would be removing all of them. It's asking me if I'm sure I want to do this, and I'm going to type the letter Y for yes. And it tells me that it's erasing those software packages. So Wireshark then will no longer be installed on this host. We can verify this by typing yum list installed, and again, we might even want to grep it for Wireshark. It would make it easier to see. We shouldn't get any output because we've removed or erased the Wireshark packages from this host. We can see from the screen output that there are no software packages installed any longer with the word Wireshark in their name. Another interesting feature of yum is that we can swap one software package with another, or a group of packages with another. For example, what I'm going to do is I'm going to swap the VNC software packages for remote connectivity with the remote desktop protocol or RDP packages instead. Essentially, I'm removing all the VNC packages and installing all of the RDP, but I can do it in one command line using yum space swap. I'll go ahead and press enter. So it's checked the dependencies, and I can see what it's going to install versus what it's going to remove. It's prompting me at the bottom as to whether or not this is okay. If I want to proceed with this swap, then I would type the letter Y. In this video, we learned how to reinstall or replace a software package using yum. In this video, I'll demonstrate how to configure a software repository. In Linux, software repositories are collections of software packages. And from that repository, we can choose to install or update software. Here at the command line, I'm going to type yum space repo list to get a list of enabled software repositories on this Linux system. Here we see that we've got one software repository, the Red Hat Enterprise Linux 7 Server RPMs repository. I could type in yum space repo list space all to view all possible software repositories, including those that are disabled. We can see clearly in the rightmost column the state of the repository in terms of whether it's disabled or whether it's enabled. We're going to enable another software repository, specifically the software repository that allows us to install Oracle Java RPMs. I can do this from the command line. I can type in yum-config-manager space --enable, and then I can put in the name of the repository that I wish to enable. I'll go ahead and press enter. I get a bit of feedback on the screen about that software repository, but I'm going to clear the screen, and using my up arrow key, I'm going to go through my command history so that I can once again run the yum repo list command. We can now see that our second software repository has been successfully enabled. We can also work with software repositories or software sources in the graphical interface. In the upper left, I'll click on the Applications menu, then I'll click System Tools, and then I'll choose Software. It tells me that the package installer is running as a privileged user because I'm logged in as root. I'll click the Continue Anyway button. and then I'll maximize our software package management screen. Now, when this application is running, it's reflected up in the application panel at the top of the screen. It says software. And if I click on that, from here, I can choose software sources. So in the graphical environment here, I can go under the software sources tab where I can see a list of all potential software repositories. Now, the ones that are enabled have a check mark. Of course, the ones that are disabled do not have a check mark. So as I scroll through, I can see what's been made available. Now, I can simply enable additional software repositories by putting a check mark next to the appropriate software repository. So I'm going to turn on a few of them here, and at this point, I'll then click Close. So when you add a repository, if it's a remote repository out on the internet, it has to download the metadata about that repository. So depending on your network link to the internet, it could take a moment or two each time you select one of these sources. I'll go ahead and click Close. Now, I might want to go to the software application panel listing at the top, and I might want to choose Refresh Package Lists. This way, any changes I've added will show up in the left-hand navigation panel, as well as when I do a search for software to install or to update. In this video, we learned how to configure software repositories. In this video, I'll demonstrate how to use a local repository for package management. In Linux, software repositories contain software that we can install or update. And those repositories could exist locally in the form of a subdirectory with software packages or a DVD, or remotely over the internet, for example on an HTTP or FTP site. Here, on my Linux system, I've already created a subdirectory on the root of the file system called custom_repo. I've typed ls in that location, and you can see I have a number of Java RPM software packages. The great thing about building your own custom local repository is you can make sure that you've tested packages first before they get placed here. And then you would have essentially a repository that has only approved updates, for example. Now, there's more to creating a custom local repository than just making the directory and putting files in there. We have to use the create repo command to build it as a repository. The first thing we should do is use the yum command to ensure that the create repo package is already installed. In some Linux distributions, it is installed automatically, and in others, it's not. So I'm typing in here yum space list space installed, and I'm piping that to grep because I'm checking to see if the create repo package is installed. Here in Red Hat Enterprise Linux, it's already installed, so we can get right to work. I'll start by typing create repo, that's one word, space, and then I give it the name of the subdirectory where I've put some software packages. Here, that's going to be /custom_repo, and I'll press enter. What it's going to do is index the contents of that repository directory. If I do an ls within the custom repo directory, you'll notice the presence of a new folder called repo data. And if we take a look inside that folder, there are a number of metadata files that were created. However, that's not it. We now need to modify a repository file so that Linux knows we have another yum repository. I'm going to type vi space /etc /yum.repos.d /rhel-local.repo. So I'm creating a file here, because I've not done this already, called rhel-local.repo. In this file, I'm going to press insert so I can modify the contents, and I'll start with an open square bracket where I've got to give it the name of the repository, which is going to be custom_repo close square bracket. I'll press enter, and on the next line, I'll type in name equals, and this is where I can put in a more descriptive name for this repository. I'll type in custom local repository. On the next line, I'm going to type in base URL equals, and in quotes, I'll put file : then 3 front slashes, And I'll put in the local subdirectory reference, which is custom_repo, and then I'll close the double quotes. So what I've done here is I've made a reference to a local file resource for the repository, but it just as well could be an HTTP website where we've configured a repository elsewhere. Finally, I'll add one other line that says GPG check equals 0. We're not dealing with digitally signed software, so I'm essentially turning that option off. Now I'll press escape to go back to command mode here in the VI text editor, where I'll type :WQ to write and quit the file. I'll clear the screen, and to see if our work was done correctly, I'm going to type yum space repo list. This should show me any enabled software repositories, and we can see we now have a new entry for our custom local repository. It also shows up in the graphical interface. So if I were to go to the Applications menu in the upper left, then down to System Tools, and then into Software, I'm going to click Continue Anyway for the message that pops up. I can see, if I were to go to the Software entry in the Application panel, under Software Sources, and then under the Software Sources tab, that our custom local repository is enabled. It shows up here even in the GUI. As a matter of fact, here in the Software Package Manager program, in the left-hand navigator panel in the bottom left, if I expand Software Sources, I can actually see Custom Local Repository, and if I click it, I can see the software made available in that location. In this video, we learned how to use local repositories for package management.